So in today's video, we're going to be talking about what I think is the coolest way to play triads on the guitar. So it's something called spread triads, and it's a really, really fun concept to get into. So without further ado, let's get started. So most of you probably know regular triads already, and if you don't, well, you should watch my other video, how to learn C major triads all over the fretboard. You should be somewhat familiar with regular triads before you delve into this topic of spread triads. So essentially, the concept of a spread triad is taking a regular triad and raising one of the notes up an octave, which makes it a spread triad. And actually, it means that all of the notes that are within the triad, normally they fall within the range of one octave. But then once we raise one of those notes up an octave, it makes the total sort of width or span of the chord go over an octave. So what we're going to do first is just convert our three different inversions that we have of regular triads into spread triads. So you take a look on the screen. First, we're going to take a root position C major triad, which is played like this. Check out the tab. And we're actually going to raise our E note, which is the middle note. We're going to raise it up an octave, okay? And we're going to actually refinger it, and we're going to play it like this. So now all of a sudden you hear there's that really, really open sound to this, okay? So that's what happens when we turn a root position triad into spread triad. Now we're going to do the same thing with first inversion. So this has the E on the bottom. There's C, E, and G in the chord. E is on the bottom, which is the third, which makes it first inversion. Again, you should be somewhat familiar with inversions if you're checking this video out. Now we're going to raise the middle note, which is G, up an octave, and we get this. If you want to strum this all with your pick, by the way, you just need to make sure you're muting the string that we're skipping, because if you notice, there's a string that gets skipped in each one of these shapes. So first we had this, and now we have this. So that's that middle one on the notation. And then finally, we're going to take a second inversion triad, which has the notes G, C, and E. And we're going to take C, and we're going to raise that up an octave, and we're going to get this fingering. By the way, with the second inversion spread triads, you're going to see actually it just depends on what you prefer. There's actually two different fingerings you can use. You can also play like this with the E on the 14th fret instead, on the 14th fret of the fourth string instead of the 9th fret of the third string. So you could play like this. I don't like that fingering as much most of the time. Sometimes it works better. But either way you slice it, the second inversion ones are kind of tricky to play. All right, so now you got the concept of a spread triad. So we're basically just taking a regular triad, there's three notes, and we're raising, actually in this case, the middle note up an octave, okay? So now let's go to our next example. What we're gonna do is we're going to harmonize a major scale using spread triads. So this is something you should be able to do with regular triads. You should be familiar with all of the chords that are in the major scale. And really you should know them in all keys as well, but we're just going to be dealing with the key of C major. So now we're going to be playing some minor triads as well. And then we're going to also play a diminished triad. So this is what this example looks like. So we're going to harmonize the major scale with root position spread triads. So it'll sound like this. And then we should also do it backwards as well. So once you familiarize yourself with that, of course, try to make some chord progressions with it. Just just right away, I mean, you can already start to come up with some really, really cool sounding stuff. So now we're going to do the same exact thing, but with first inversion spread triads. And that's going to be played like this. So if you notice, for the last 3 chords, the A minor, the B diminished, and the last C major chord, we switched string sets. So right now we're just going over a few examples on some different string sets, but once you get more comfortable with this idea of a spread triad, how they're constructed, and you should be able to figure them out on all the string sets of the guitar, okay? By using your knowledge of the notes in these chords, you should be able to work out the rest of all of the fingerings of the spread triads on every single string set of the guitar. Okay, so that is our first inversion harmonized major scale. So of course, those first inversion ones sound really cool. So that was like C to E minor, and then F, and then back to C. Okay, so now we're gonna do one more time, but with second inversion. Now, just for the sake of not going like insanely high in the fretboard, maybe you're playing on an acoustic guitar, you don't have as many frets available as I do, we're gonna actually play the second inversion shapes on the last string set that we have available to us, which is going to be the fourth, second, and then first strings, okay? And actually, the fingerings for second inversion are a little bit easier on this set of strings as well than they are on the middle set of strings like we were looking at earlier. But this is a good opportunity for you to cover a couple of different string sets as well. So the first one we have is C major, then we D minor, then E minor, then F, G, A minor, and then this one's really tricky here, B diminished. If you play this one down the octave, like down here, I mean, it's actually almost impossible to play. But we'll play it over here instead so that it is possible. And then back to C major. Okay, so of course, mess around, improvise with these in time, or write some chord progressions as well. If you check out my other video, how to practice everything on the guitar, you should apply those practice techniques to this piece of material. This kind of idea. Also, what you should practice now, step 3, is arpeggiating these spread triads. This is going to allow you to be able to actually solo with them, right? So just playing them sort of in what we call block chord format, it's going to help with your rhythm guitar ability, but then arpeggiating it is what's going to help you actually be able to use these in your solos. Now, these are also really great alternate picking exercises. So we're just going to look at one example here. So this is actually going to be the chord scale we did with the root position triads, okay? So we're going to basically just apply this pattern to each of the chords. So we're going to play the bottom note, then the middle note, then the top note, and back to the middle note. So we get this. I'm just doing it on one chord for right now, right? But we're going to go through all of the chords there in the key of C major. So it'll sound something like this. And as you can see, of course, now that starts to sound really, really cool, and it's giving you a lot of technical benefits as well. So if you improvise a little bit with this kind of idea of arpeggiating chords and make your own different chord progressions with it, it kind of sounds a lot like Bach, actually. If you listen to, I think it's a cello suite in G, that piece by Bach actually uses a lot of spread triads in it. So this kind of thing, if we mix it up and make our own chord progressions and be creative with it, sounds really cool. And then also try to come up with your own cool patterns to arpeggiate through the chords. So that was step 3, practice arpeggiating these. Of course, do it with all the other inversions that we just covered, the second inversion and the first inversion. And of course, sometimes you're gonna make a couple of mistakes because you get a lot of string skipping in there. So it's really, really good for your right hand technique. These are quite difficult to play really, really fast. And once you go back to playing like a lot of linear stuff, it'll feel way easier after you've been practicing these spread triads for quite a while. So now the last thing we're gonna cover with this spread triad primer is, of course, now we're going to actually apply it to a popular chord progression. So we're going to apply this concept to the 1, 5, 6, 4 progression in the key of C. And what we're going to do is actually do what's called voice lead through the progression. So what is voice leading? This is something I've talked about a lot of times before, but voice leading is when we figure out what notes are in each chord, and then we move each voice in a chord to the closest possible note in the next chord. Now, we're not going to turn this whole thing into a giant voice leading lesson, but we're going to go through some examples and you can analyze them and see how we're going from one chord to the next chord using actually different inversions that are kind of being mixed up, but it gives us the smoothest possible voice leading where we don't have to move our hands like all over the fretboard to play this chord progression. Because if we wanted to, we could play the chord progression just using the same inversion the whole entire time, but that wouldn't be what's called smooth voice leading. So like C, and then G, and then A minor, and then F. That sounds good, but that's not really smooth voice leading. So let's try to check this out. So this one, we're going to be starting with a root position, and now actually this root position is starting with the root on the 6th string. So this is another very, very useful fingering to have under your belt. So C major, and then we're going to G major, which is actually first inversion. And notice how the hand doesn't have to move that far because there's very smooth voice leading. Then we're going to go up to A minor, which is also first inversion. And then we're literally just going to move this E note, which we're playing with our pinky, up 1 fret. And now that actually turns into an F major chord. That's the smoothest possible voice leading we can have from A minor to F major. Is we just change one note because there's actually only one note different from A minor to F major. A minor has A, C, and E in it. And then F major has F, A, and C. So the only difference is E and F. So that's what that sounds like. Let's play one more time, and then we're actually going to play this one with a backing track. Let's see what it sounds like in context with a backing track playing. So now version 2 is starting with C major as a first inversion. So we have this C major, and then we have actually G major, which is going to be second inversion. It's going to sound like this. And again, this is that fingering that I was telling you about. It's kind of a pain in the butt. It's got a 5 fret stretch there. So we have C major, G major, and then A minor second inversion. This is a little bit easier. And then we move the E up to F, and we get F major. All right, let's see what that one sounds like with the backing track. So obviously that one also sounds really cool. And also, again, if you arpeggiate these, that's how you start getting more into using them in your solos. And don't feel the need to sort of play them really fast like I was doing, like play them in 16th notes. Even if you just play a quarter notes or even half notes and just play 1 or 2 notes on each chord as the track's going by, that's also something that will start to make really, really beautiful sounding melodies. Okay, finally, let's do one more example. We're gonna start with a C major in a second inversion, okay? So we got this one. You should remember that one from the previous example where we played through the chord scale in second inversion. And then we're gonna actually give it a root position G major, and then also root position A minor, and then same thing, A minor to F, the E always moves up 1 fret to F. So now we have F in first inversion. So let's see what that sounds like with the track. We're gonna play the chords and then solo a little bit with it. So if you can just get all the stuff down that we talked about in this video, you're going to have a pretty good grasp of spread triads. So what are the next steps you should take once you do get everything down in this video? Well, you should practice them in all keys, and then you should also practice applying them to any chord progressions and songs that you already know. Very, very important to do those things with any concept that you learn, especially with this concept, okay? Don't just play one chord progression. Go through any different songs that you know. Lots of songs are just gonna be 1, 4, and 5, and 6 over and over. So even this is gonna cover a lot of what you're gonna see in different songs, but you're gonna have to do it in different keys. And then also use your knowledge of the fretboard to work out these shapes on every single set of strings. We covered most of it today, but not every single last bit of it. So if you want to learn everything that you need to know to be able to master the guitar fretboard so that you can play these concepts in any key on any song, then make sure you head on over to Jamsville.com right now and pick up the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course, which I designed specifically to show you everything you need to know to become a total master of the guitar fretboard. Also, make sure you leave a like on this video and check the description below for a link to the document that contains all of the examples shown in this video. All right, everybody, until next time, listen, learn, and jam.